Hey everyone, so I've been researching and planning this video for quite a while now, but in the wake of the whole controversy surrounding Andrew Huang and the Book of Chances, it sort of seemed like a good time to, finalize it and put it out. And it's now been a little while since then, so, some of the things are quite focused on that and maybe a little bit irrelevant as things go, but I still thought, it's an interesting topic and I spent a long time working on it, so I decided to put it out anyway. It's going to look very much like this throughout the video, so I apologize for that, but hopefully it sounds okay at the very least. But the point is the discussion, so please use the comment section and, share your thoughts and opinions on AI, and hopefully we can get the discussion going. But yeah, I think it's an interesting topic, and it's kind of become more of a widely acknowledged thing in very recent times. So with that out of the way, enjoy. So I'm sure we've all seen by now Andrew Huang's
The Book of Chances,
and the controversy that has stemmed from it in relation to AI and its use in artistic industries. This is something that impacts really any artist in any form, whether it's visual art, music, or really any other format of creativity, because AI is seeping into everything we do. Really, there are a lot of reasons to support both sides of the issue. And I guess it's come to the mainstream attention recently with this whole Andrew Huang debate. But it's been something that's become progressively more impactful on the lives of people who make their living by being creative over the past couple of years, as AI tools have become readily available to create things without a human involved. Really, I'm just putting my 2 cents into this issue that no one asked for. So here we go. It's complicated is the biggest thing. There are good points on both sides, whether you're supporting the usage of AI in creative industries, whether you're supporting it with limitations on its usage, or how it interacts with copyright law, or whether you're completely against it. It's difficult to make a solid and complete argument for or against without acknowledging the other side of the debate. I feel like the Book of Chances, Andrew Huang's product, has been brought down by this whole thing. Not to say, as a person operating a business and a product, he made the choice to include this art without doing proper research and gathering proper information on where it came from, and now he's facing the consequences of that. But it does raise the concern of how sometimes it can be difficult to determine where something came from, and how he's now being affected by that for something that isn't necessarily his own fault. A lot of people have mentioned how clear it is that AI was used in the development of the art, and aesthetically it does have a lot of similarities to AI produced art. But one good point that I think he makes is that if you're looking at the video that the artist put out, which showcases basically his workflow for creating this art, and it does acknowledge
Scott generates 3 things with AI to incorporate into the piece.
And then Andrew makes a good point.
I also don't know that many people could reliably guess what was or wasn't AI in this image.
It is difficult to tell which components are AI generated and which come from other sources, which I guess just goes to show that, it's more of an aesthetic thing than a clear that is AI and that is not. In the context of this product, this deck of cards that you can buy, the art really is not what you're there for. Like, yes, it is a deck of cards meant to inspire a musician to create something with a variety of musical and more generally creative prompts, including the art, but the art is not the only reason why the product stands on its own. It is a pretty highly priced deck of cards, which leads me to think he's probably spent a good bit of money paying this artist. And looking at the art on the cards, it is hard not to see the influence from AI. AI is here. It is a piece of technology that we have. People are going to use it. How should this be allowed? How should this be mandated? The humans who are creating the work prior to the
existence of AI are the ones who are going to be negatively impacted from it, because that's their job that is being replaced, that's their art that is being taken by these companies, and it's their art that is, being replaced by a machine that can crank out similar results in 1% of the time. There are three main issues here. So the first one is related to AI taking art from artists without their consent and using it as training data to then reproduce art that is similar aesthetically to any one particular artist. Undoubtedly, that is true. AI takes in source imagery. It associates graphical data with lexical data from, tags and titles associated with each work, takes that, combines it all, creates a neural network that no one really can understand, and then on the other end it takes a text input, goes, where have these pieces of text shown up in my database, and therefore what imagery is each of these text things associated with, and it comes out with something. And you can understand that if it's connecting from images to text and then from text back to images, there are going to be similarities between the output and the input data for any given piece of text that you put in. So that makes it very easy then to put in an artist's name into the prompt and get art out that looks a lot like them, looks like something in their style, and could be considered plagiarism without actually being a copy of any one of their works. But you could also argue that's exactly what human artists do. Artists in training absolutely challenge themselves to recreate the style of another artist, whether that's visual art or music. A very common and very helpful, really, exercise is to recreate something in the style of a certain artist in whatever format you're working with. I think the issue that people have here is somewhere along the line between what humans do to recreate something, and I said as a challenge for themselves or as a training exercise, but it's certainly not just that. People create commercially released music and art under the guise of having created it in the style of another artist. Whether or not they admit that, or whether or not that's the theme of the art, it is absolutely within their right, if they created the art of their own accord, to release that and gain money from their production of that piece of art. So between that end of the scale of what humans are doing to almost what people seem to be considering as ripping off an artist's work, which is what the AI does, somewhere along there on that line, there's a point where, it's decided that is infringement of copyright. Even though, really, these two things to me don't seem that far apart. It's taking an influence from AI. And aside from the point where you're generating, with an AI, you're generating a work that you've used maybe that artist's name in the prompt, and the intention is to look like their style, and you haven't put any of your own creative effort into it, I would argue that morally that is stealing their ideas and their work. But how do we put a legal point somewhere along this line of where is it allowed and where is it not allowed to gain influence, but not directly copying ideas, but just gaining influence from these ideas and combining them in partially new ways to create something new as an output? Somewhere on the line between influence and plagiarism, there is a point where it is and isn't acceptable. And another point related to that, people have been using technology in different forms to assist their creative process for forever. For as long as we've had the technology. Like, for example, AI is used by musicians every day to remove stems from tracks so that they can cover a work and listen to just the drum part and learn the drums and then cover it, or listen to just the vocals, or remove the vocals so that they can sing over the top of a backing track. That is AI. Certainly not in the same form. It's not generative AI. It's AI used in a different form, but it is still artificial intelligence generating something based off of an existing work, and then that is used as part of a creative process. Another example is, AI to remove background noise. There are plugins that do this. There's other software that does this in video editors, and it is used not just in the music industry, but in the movie industry, in a lot of creative industries, to remove background noise. And that is, again, artificial intelligence doing work that a human could do but that's not considered infringement of anything. Even though undoubtedly, in order to train that AI to remove background noise from audio, it would have had to have been given thousands of samples with background noise and then the same samples without, or like I would assume that something along those lines has occurred. But regardless, certainly copyrighted audio would have been used to train that. If you were to say copyrighted audio has been used to train an AI, therefore every result of it, monetary gain in some form, is owed to all of these artists, that doesn't seem fair for an AI that doesn't actually generate anything new. But how do we distinguish between these things? So somewhere along the line between AI assistance and AI generation, there is, again, some point where we've determined it is or isn't okay to use this and then put your own name on it as a creative output. And again, I feel like it's pretty clear morally, if you're looking at one extreme or the other, to go, that's okay and that isn't. But how there are certain technologies that could exist in a gray area. And I would argue the most important things that's going to come out of the debate related to this AI stuff over the next few years as things clear up is the legal ratifications of this. How do we determine when it is and isn't copyright infringement? At the end of the day, we can argue in comment sections over whether or not we're going to buy a deck of cards, but that doesn't change the fact that it's a commercial product. AI has been used. How do we legally determine the outcome of these situations? So the next issue is AI stealing jobs from artists in the form of big companies who previously would have hired art contractors to either, do graphic design for them, sound production, etc. And now they have the option for a tenth of the price and 1% of the time to use a computer to do the same work. And this is unequivocally true. There is no doubt about the fact that AI is removing jobs from creative workers. However, although that is, that's scary and that is a big deal, that it is removing these elements of the workforce that previously people relied upon for their income, it's also something that's benefiting small companies who are now able to break out into the field because they were previously limited by something they couldn't afford, that at the end of the day isn't the purpose of their business, but maybe it's something marketing related where they were unable to really advertise themselves because they didn't have access or they didn't have the funding to market themselves properly, but now they can do it with AI, and they've ended up being really successful with an innovative product, but AI was used not as a foundational part of their product, but certainly as part of their business. And that's another legal issue of, do the people whose art was used to train that AI need to be credited and paid for their work when the AI generated content is not even the main product of that company? It's something that was used for marketing or in some other small way. At the end of the day, it comes down to money being owed to various artists. How is that determined? And finally, this is the last issue, and it doesn't really have a legal component to it, it's not even really a moral thing, it's just a creative thing, is that AI removes creativity for artists. And this is not about AI replacing artists or taking art from artists. It's just about, if you're the artist yourself, the option to use AI to, help you in your creative process can seem really inviting, but how does it impact your own creativity? And there are pros and cons to this, having this option, depending on how, the extent and the method you choose to use AI in your creative process. Or in other words, there are good and bad ways to use it. So for example, there was an architecture company that was using AI to generate basically initial idea generation for their clients, to say they would put into this AI that was trained on, I don't know whether it was trained on their own previous works, but surely for one firm that wouldn't be enough training data. So I would imagine it was trained on, architectural works from a variety of other companies that perhaps they weren't entitled to use to train their own data set. So I would imagine there was some form of copyright infringement going into the training of that AI. But they were using it to create basically, idea generation and mood boards for their clients to say, we've given the AI the dimensions, the colors, the whatever their client has given them as what they're after, given them 10 different options, and then they can select, this is the direction I'd like to go. And then the architects run with it, and it's their creative process from there onwards. But still, the initial idea came from an AI product, and has certainly, in a way, removed creativity. However, it's also just allowed them to get their work done. At the end of the day, they've still created the final product, and from almost the very beginning, it has been exclusively human work. It's just the early stage, which can often be a bottleneck when you're trying to collaborate with a client who is paying you, and they're entitled to get something that works for them out of it. But it's also an issue of time, having to charge for additional time for work that doesn't end up being used. In that sense, for a variety of different creative reasons, it can be really beneficial to have that first chunk of the work done for you effectively. However, it's also really easily possible to overuse this, I would say, and have maybe generating a few of your own ideas, and then picking one and giving it to an artificial intelligence algorithm, which is kind of flipping the other thing on its head and saying, I'm going to come up with something, and then this AI is going to do it for me, and then I'm going to put my name on it and say I made it, even though I just came up with an idea and then didn't do it myself. And depending on the context for that, I feel like it could be really considered a lazy choice, but it could also just be really freeing for someone who has limitations in whatever aspect that this may be. For example, using an AI, if you're creating a musical project and using AI to generate your album art, coming up with a few basic concepts and then giving them to an AI to generate the art. And that is something I have done. To date, 2 of my 3 releases that are out on streaming services use AI art. And to be honest, for my own personal consideration of creativity, I would prefer not to do that in the future. But it certainly, at the time as well, generated better looking art for the album than I could have, especially because they were based on time constraints of generating an album within the month of February for the RPM challenge. Art was really not the focus, but I still wanted something that could be at least represented in some form. So it was good to have something generated quickly, especially when the art was not the main component of the product. But again, that was still, as far as I was made aware by the AI model, all of the training data was royalty free, which certainly, if that's true, I would say there are no ethical concerns with how it was used, but it is impossible for me individually to verify what training data was used. What I'm really saying is it's complicated. There are good reasons to use AI in creative works that I would argue do not violate the copyright of any other individual and are beneficial to removing the mundane parts of the creative process, whether that's initial idea generation, whether you've created the part you're really confident with, but in order to put it out there, it has to be combined with some other aspect of creativity. Again, for example, the art for an album, where that part of the process is really not your field. And then there are also other things which certainly do not infringe on copyright in my opinion, but potentially it could be argued that they infringe on creativity, like using AI for mastering or mixing your music, or as a final edit over like there are AI editing tools for music, and I'd imagine also for art. Obviously there are like the generative fill tools in Photoshop. This is not my field, but there are all of these tools available to artists in every field that use artificial intelligence to some degree, whether that's a basic low-level thing that interpolates data from other areas of only that image, or whether it's actually extracting data from thousands of training images that may or may not be copyrighted. On the other side, there are also obviously a lot of ways to use AI that are inherently removing creativity from your own process, infringing on copyright of other artists, and just overall don't seem enjoyable to participate in. Like, you're going out to produce a product and then getting a computer to do the whole thing for you and stealing from other creatives. But I guess it's pretty obvious that the motivation for that is just money, because it's so easy to put out an AI generated product and make a shit ton of money from it when you didn't put any work into it. Anyway, that's all I have to say. It's a complex issue, and I don't know. This is just one of those things that's always going to be around. We can't really take it away, and even if it becomes illegal or there are mandates put in place to declare AI use, which is already becoming a widespread thing, it's always going to be impossible to police it effectively. There's always going to be people who are misusing the system and people who are, using it to achieve great things. So it really is an individual thing of what is your opinion about the issue, but also it needs to be a legal thing of what is allowed to be done in the realm of copyright infringement when other people's work is used to train a data set. So yeah, I'm curious to know what people think. If anyone does happen to watch this, please leave your thoughts in the comments. I'm very interested in this debate about, it's been sparked by the most random thing where the AI generated art is really not the point of that product. And also, the fact that he was talking about having spent, working on this product for years, and of course it's possible that the first few years of that were just slowly coming up with the text prompts and deciding exactly what will and won't be included on the card. But I'd assume a significant portion of that was paying an artist to do this work. It's impossible to know how exactly the art was generated, but it really seems misleading, the video that was produced. And in that one, it did seem like there was a decent bit of creativity going into the process, but aesthetically, that one does not look the same as a lot of the other cards did. So it's hard to say how misleading it is, and whether that responsibility falls onto the artist, and Andrew Huang is just passing on the information, which is certainly what it seems like. But I guess there's also an element of accountability of choosing to release a product with an AI component in it knowingly, and how much of that responsibility falls onto the artist or the person who's producing the final product. Honestly, in this context of the deck of cards, I feel like this debate is kind of getting out of hand. It's just not that deep. But also, as someone who's, barely working, but creating content in the creative industry, it is hard to know, what the future holds and how this impacts people in the future. Also, sorry if anything looks or sounds like shit. I'm recording this on my phone with a microphone, but it's just, nothing's working today. So, sorry if it looks, which I know it doesn't look great, but hopefully it's sounding okay. Anyway, thank you for watching, and see you soon.